Back to Bob Lazar and Gene Huff. Gentlemen, you're back on the air again. All right. So here we are. You're in a little room with a bunch of briefing papers giving you more or less an outline but not specifics of the work being done on. Actually, at that point, did they state what it was that was being worked on?
Well, at this point, yeah. This is the first time I really knew exactly what I would be doing. And this is where it was stated that the project was essentially that of back engineering an extraterrestrial craft.
That must be quite a line to read.
Well, it was, and it was also hard to believe, because certainly going into the project, I was basically a nuts and bolts guy and certainly didn't believe in UFOs and thought everyone was crazy that even considered the topic. I certainly believe that there was life elsewhere. Certainly life can exist on other planets, other galaxies, other solar systems, but I just found it very hard to believe that there was any intelligent life visiting Earth. And
you had never had any close encounter of the third kind?
No, and I thought people were basically crackpots that thought so.
Whacked out.
But also, Art, he was into science and technology, and he certainly wasn't well-read. I mean, he had never heard of the, Betty and Barney Hill case, or he didn't know anything about the Roswell crash or anything along those lines. I mean, he wasn't interested, and he didn't pursue it. And if you all remember, really a decade ago, I mean, some of that information was available, but certainly wasn't prevalent to the point that it is today with websites and movies and television shows.
Oh, indeed. As a matter of fact, before we proceed, Bob, I'd be very, very interested to hear your reaction. I have interviewed now twice, very rare interviews, by the way, hours-long interviews, with Colonel Philip Corso. And I'm kind of interested to get your reaction to Colonel Corso's revelations about the back engineering and insertion into American industry he did of artifacts from the Roswell crash. Were you surprised to hear about that?
This is the first I'm hearing about this.
Is that right?
What is
all right.
inserted into
all right,
American
Philip J. Corso, Colonel.
Believe it or not, I really am completely uninterested in the topic UFOs and never follow it at all.
All right, well,
I'm in the dark as follows.
From the Kingdom of Nye, this is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the CBC Radio Network.
This is a man who was given the job. He's now 82 years of age, by the way. He was given the job of, he was actually handed a filing cabinet by a general, and he was given a job of figuring out what some of these things were and introducing them into American industry, specifically Bell Labs and some others at the time. And these were artifacts from Roswell, and he is very, very credible. He wrote a book called The Day After Roswell.
What specifically? What devices?
Devices that led to, and it's going to be hard, night vision scopes, for example, fiber optics, for example, the transistor, for example, a lot of leaps that, by the way, particularly the transistor, there's not much of a paper trail for. If you look back at the development in Bell Labs of the transistor, there's not a big paper trail. Yes, it arrived, but there's not a big paper trail about how it arrived.
Well, I'm so skeptical of something like that. The reason being, well, let me tell you, certainly you've seen pictures of the first transistor. We know it was developed at Bell Labs. We know there were a couple of guys working on it. But you know what the first transistor was. It was essentially just, it was more along the lines of a diode, just a P-N and a P junction. It's on a big slab of silicon. It really couldn't do anything. Certainly, if we had been given that advanced technology at that time, wouldn't it have been something a little more down the road?
So a lot of it was. A lot of it they had no idea, and...
well, is he saying that he worked with some of these guys, or hinted to them, or was this all a big conspiracy and everyone was...
No, he was just a middleman, and his assignment was to take something that looked interesting and take it to American industry and try and determine the function and whether it could be duplicated or not. It's a long story, and I don't want to burden you with it, but...
and also, Bob, he's highly qualified. I mean, this guy is
I'm not,
some place.
I'm not immediately debunking him, but I'm,
Sure.
It's just my natural reaction to jump on that.
But Art, he was an officer in the military and held some very lofty positions, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I'd actually be interested to look at that.
Art, I actually gave him UFO magazine so he could read about it, but he doesn't read about UFOs. So.
I understand. It really is true. People don't believe this about you, Bob. They think you are the guru of ufology. And
boy, have you got the wrong guy.
Yeah, and it just isn't true.
No, please.
You see, I remember the interview I did with you before. I remember it very well. Anyway, so here you are reading about all of this, and you get sort of an overview of it all, and probably by... What are you thinking by then? I mean, is your mouth hanging open? Extraterrestrial?
It is to some extent, and another part of me is beginning to wonder whether or not this is true at all, or if this is some
sort of
psychological test.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else was so way out, essentially. Maybe this is, another game that we're playing.
Maybe they're just trying to determine what reactions of people in science would be to extraterrestrial craft or the fact of extraterrestrial presence of any kind at all.
Right, and certainly all these thoughts had gone through my mind. From there, the days have kind of blended together in my mind. It's hard to separate what happened on each day after that, but I believe that the next time I went there was the time that I was actually let in through one of the hangar doors. Now, normally we drove alongside of the installation and came in the main entrance.
Mm-hmm.
This one time, we drove up and one of the hangar doors was open.
Uh-huh.
In the hangar doors, as plain as day, or in the hangar door, as plain as day, was the craft that I had later labeled the sport model. A very sleek-looking, very stereotypical flying saucer. My immediate reaction was, this is the new generation fighter that we're working on. For whatever reason, it's saucer-shaped, but immediately in my mind, I said, this explains all the UFO sightings throughout history. It's just been the development of this thing.
Here it is.
Right, here it is. This makes perfect sense.
I've got a model 5 feet away from me here, a tester model, which I believe the Tester Corporation built based on your description.
Right. It looked exactly like that.
Is that what we're talking about, the
exactly.
sport model you call the sport model?
Yeah, very sleek, sporty looking. Yeah, that's it exactly.
I'll be damned. All right. So you drove by this thing.
We actually stopped in front.
In front.
I was led out of the bus, the security guard first, then Dennis and myself. Dennis walked on ahead of me, and the security guard told me to keep my eyes forward and just follow Dennis into the back. And at the back of the hangar, there was a door that led into a hallway in the office areas. I walked right by the craft,